about a question that I get asked all the time, and that is how it's like to live in a tiny house and what are the pros and cons of living in a tiny house and building a tiny house. And we have been living here in this tiny house for almost a year. It's a good time to start this video because now time passed and I can see what are the pros and what are the cons of living in a tiny house, and also a little bit about building aspects that I would like to talk about today. First, I would like to start with the pros, and that is for me having your own house. And that is for me a big point, because when you have your own house, Lila, hey, shh, oh, look at the carpet. When you have your own house, everything you do, you add value to your own house. I'm not saying if you rent you don't do that, but if you have your own house, it kind of keeps you motivated about improving the house. It helps you, reinvest in some areas that you maybe wouldn't have done if you would be renting. And the good thing that we, for example, just added was an AC. We just got an AC. That is so amazing because it got really hot in here in Hawaii. Obviously, it's super hot, but especially in the summertime, in a small house, it's really hard with the circulation, even though we do have a lot of windows. We got an AC, which was great, and I don't know if we would have done that if it would have been in a rental. Another thing that I really realized that makes me very into living in a tiny house is the consumption, and that kind of ties to the space that we have available. I mean, our house is pretty big for a tiny house because I think it's almost 400 square feet, which is quite big for a tiny house. And even though we do have space, I really think 3 times if I really need it. So I really minimized it down to just a few cups, just a few bowls, and all these necessities. I just try to very minimize them, if that makes sense, because I feel like the more space I have, the better I feel. And I realized I have a bunch of cabinet space that I don't even use, underneath. I'm everybody's oh, how do you do that? But actually being forced also made me even more less consuming, I guess. So now I still have space even though it's a tiny house. Another pro I feel is that this has to be seen as an investment, because Hawaii is very expensive and rent can be extremely expensive. With this tiny house, we really have a very good opportunity to save up money. But of course, this kind of life also meant having a huge investment in the first place, and I'm going to talk about cost of building a tiny house a little bit later. So it is a pro, but it also is a con. It really depends on the situation. Another cool thing is that our tiny house, it's pretty big, but it is portable. So you could move your house if you decide to move somewhere else. For example, for us, if we would find a different place to put it, we could move our house somewhere else. And I think that's also another plus, that that you're very location independent with a tiny house. And that also shows that our footprint from living in a tiny house is very small, because everything we use, the space we use is very tiny. So this is another positive aspect of living in a tiny house. But that also comes with a huge cost, and that is the space, because living in a tiny house for such a long time, I realized how space is so valuable, and if you don't have it, it's really can be clustering, or it can be difficult to feel comfortable. And that is actually one of the biggest points, and that is cleaning, because a lot of people are oh, you're so quick with cleaning and stuff. The thing though is that living in a tiny house means that you barely have space, so you have to clean constantly. You can't, just a few pieces make the whole house extremely messy. So I have to clean a lot of, every day, because I really want to make sure that the valuable space that you have, that you actually can use it, and you can't if you have stuff laying around everywhere. And that really made me an extremely tidy person. Also, since we are really off the grid, we have to make sure everything is always, stored away, no open packages, and all the dishes are done, and you have to be extremely tidy. That also comes to another con, and that is when building a tiny house, especially in Hawaii, where materials and everything is very expensive, where labor is very expensive. We had to really invest a lot in help from other contractors, because we don't have IKEA or something cheap here to buy stuff. But even if most of the stuff doesn't even fit. So the whole house is extremely custom, and since it's not such a big trend yet where you can say, okay, there's a bunch of tiny house furniture, you pretty much have to do everything from scratch, which can be very costly, and it can be very time consuming. Yeah, you could argue, yeah, if you have unlimited time, you can build that yourself and you would save money, but at the end of the day, for example, the kitchen, so building our own custom kitchen was extremely expensive because we couldn't just use a pre-made kitchen. Same with the fridge. We have like a tiny fridge. Actually, now I don't mind it too bad because we realized we just go more shopping, so we don't have all the stuff stocked in the fridge, but that's fine. Also, we just try to keep everything very minimal. Another huge one is law. So you want to be sure that in the area you build your tiny house in, that you build according to code, meaning like you do all the regulations needed and permits needed in order to build your tiny house, because a lot of areas do not allow tiny houses, and we had to deal with that a lot. But yeah, that's really something I urge you to take care of all your location specific laws, that you make sure you follow all of these. One of the biggest cons, I have to say, is the toilet. We have a Incinerator, which is already like a very expensive toilet. I never thought I would have spent that kind of money on a toilet, and it's not that great. Honestly, I think that toilet is a couple of $1,000. I do not like it. I cannot recommend it because it's disgusting to clean. It really doesn't burn in the way they claim it to be. And I know they say, yeah, you have to install it right, but we had bunch of people will install it, and I just do not think that this is a good solution. I think right now we do not have any other solution. A composting toilet wasn't really for me, so I thought I'm going to try something else, and that's when we got the Incinerator, and we were hoping, because the claims online are so amazing, like, oh, it doesn't smell, it's like really perfect, it burns in, you only have to empty it very few times. But the reality, it does smell like burn, it smells constantly like burn, it does smell, and it also is very difficult to clean long term, and it's disgusting. So I'm sorry, this is not, I just want to be honest with you, because I know a lot of people, you're looking into materials and different things I use, and I just want to give you the honest opinion. I can say that I personally do not think that the Incinerator is the best option. I think it's a better option, but it's not an option, and I hope that there will be something out very soon that makes it more friendly, because it's something you use every day, and it's just kind of an aspect that really makes me not want to stay in a tiny house for a very long time, because it's really not a nice aspect. But yeah, that's one of the cons. However, there's another pro, and another pro I'd like to say is my outdoor shower. Since we did not have enough space inside, and I always wanted to have an outdoor shower anyways, so we put our shower outside, which is extremely beautiful. It's a favorite part of the house. It's very blissful in the morning, taking showers outside and just breathing in the fresh air while, you know, you look at the bananas and stuff. It's really, really gorgeous. So I really love that aspect, that makes you more creative when you have less available and less space. Now, if we talk about the cost of building a tiny house, it really can range from anywhere to everywhere, because we started with a very low budget, but ended up spending actually a lot of money, because realized that Hawaii was just not a place to build cheap. It's just not. Like, you can try as much as you want, but we tried everything. We tried to do recycled material, which ended up being more expensive than just going to the Home Depot or other department stores. And hey, we also tried to recycle as much as we could and try to build ourselves as much as we could. We traded a lot of work, but at the end of the day, Hawaii is a very, very expensive place to build, no matter what. And I think everybody who lives here and who knows how much rent is and how much it is to build a normal house knows how expensive it is. And actually, that's one of the main things that I realized is, even though it is a tiny house, you still need a kitchen, you still need a bed, you still need a couch, you still need all these main necessities that are in a house as well. Maybe you need nest, but you still need flooring, you know, you need drywall, you need all these things, or windows, you know. It almost maybe is less, but still everything from a normal house you would need, and most of it also you need custom, which is more expensive. So saying that building a tiny house is cheap, I think that's not the reality. I think There are maybe people who have a lot of time on their hand and very skilled, who can build the house over, a year or two, and maybe just put in very few materials and put a lot of labor themselves. But on the end of the day, I think that building a tiny house is a big investment, and it helps you later on to save rent for a long period of time. So it helped us a lot, but we had to come up with a lot of money up front. And I say building a tiny house, the cheapest I've heard were about like 50, maybe 50,000, and it probably goes up to, I think on the Big Island, some people built one for 150. So it's pretty much everything in between. I think when you see online, oh, building a tiny house for 15 grand, I'm like, maybe that is possible in different places. I'm sure there are circumstances where you're able to do that, but living in a tiny house realistically, you spend a lot more. And actually, we ended up saving a lot of money because we were putting so many hours in, and we put so much research in it to make it as cheap as we could. Another thing that you could think of when you build a tiny house is we did a TV show. They contacted us, and I'm sure they always look for people. If you build a tiny house, I'm sure they always look for people to film the process, which was very hard, but at the end of the day, also very rewarding. Actually, it's really cool. We got featured on Honolulu Magazinr, which is the biggest selling magazine here in Hawaii. And I didn't know they were going to put us on the front cover, so that's pretty cool. We're on there for the tiny house. That really makes me so happy because it shows that there's more people looking into tiny houses and about more sustainable way of living. And yeah, I think that's super cool that such a big magazine draws attention to this issue of housing in Hawaii. And yeah, inside I can show you. It's pretty cool. So this is the first part. It says living small, and then further it shows the inside of our house. So we actually got new lighting under the stairs, the kitchen and the loft, and they were talking about how we built it, and yeah, a little bit about our story. They actually do cover a lot about the living situation in Hawaii, and I think it's very interesting how they covered the different aspects, the cost of how people live in the tiniest places, spend a fortune of rent, and then people buy luxury condominiums in some areas here that are literally, I think, 500 square feet and they start at $700,000. So it's pretty crazy, but it's definitely worth having a look at, and pretty cool that they took us on. So yeah, I hope this answered some of your questions, and if you have more questions, feel free to ask anything. I also post a lot on my Instagram about this tiny house and about like just general stuff during the day. So if you want to see more about the tiny house living, you can also follow me on Instagram if you want to. Yep, this is pretty much it, and I hope that was informative, and I hope that you learned something and maybe that inspires you to build a tiny house, because even though there are a lot of cons, it really, really is a really great way to live sustainably and yeah, take care of your finances and see if that's an option for you. And I'm happy to help you answer some more questions. One thing I forgot, I'm just gonna add it right now, is people asked us about if we use some kind of frame, like a plans. We did not. We actually built from scratch everything. We looked on Pinterest and different magazines, and we kind of incorporated from everywhere, different kind of outlets, what made most sense for us, and that's where we came up with. So we did not have plans. We kind of just went by it, which was maybe good, maybe not. So that's kind of how we did it, but I'm sure there are also made plans that you can buy and build from there, but we kind of went as we proceed. We just saw what we wanted and we kind of kept on working on that. And yep, I think that was it. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask them and I try to answer all of them. Have a good day. Aloha.